Hi, I'm Marna Ward, and I'm the head mom for the Perrysburg PM meeting, and you're going to all be stuck with me for a few minutes as we talk about batch cooking at today's meeting. And there's a variety of approaches about how we handle and prepare and think about meal planning and dinner, but the idea of batch cooking is really probably something that most of us have heard about. I don't know about you, maybe you have an opinion about it. Whenever I hear about batch cooking, I think of the one time and you've got all these meals and it's just a great opportunity to have all of this time, and we are going to talk about that approach, but there are some other things that maybe we can think about too in regards to batch cooking. We know that it saves time, effort, and money, and it does take a little bit of planning, but I think it's also a great example of how God is the great multiplier in our life. Just as Jesus took 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish to feed a multitude, he uses that same multiplication table with us in all areas of our life. We're going to look at meal planning and batch cooking as one place that we maybe tangibly see and are able to do that, but it's in all areas that he really is the great multiplier. So batch cooking basically falls into 3 categories. There's first traditional batch cooking, which is, I admire this, I really do. And 2, there's batch prepping, and this is something that we'll get into some detail about and some different ways that that looks. And then there's 3, casserole swapping with friends and really creating a community around it. This is probably my personal favorite, and I can't wait for you to hear about that one. So the first approach we're going to talk about is traditional batch cooking. This is the idea where once a month you create a 2-week meal plan and you cook one day. You pick one day on your calendar and you cook that 2-week meal plan. So, and you double it. So essentially what happens is you have 14 individual meals, but because you've doubled them, now you have 28. I know, stay with me because I need calculators when we start talking numbers. But you have 28 meals that go in the freezer, and they're all going to be the same. So for this sort of approach, if your family likes spaghetti and they're okay eating spaghetti once a week, my family is, then I would do spaghetti. I would double that, probably twice. I'd probably have 4 pans of it, or like that spaghetti pie. Have you seen that recipe? That's a good one. Or, for example, like lasagna. If you know that your family likes lasagna, you could do all of those servings. If you picked Tuesday and the next Tuesday is going to just be your lasagna day, then you would just double that. So you'd have 4 pans of lasagna. Are you with me on this math? So it's a 2-week meal plan. You cook it once, and then you have 28 meals because you've doubled each of those meals. And the great approach about, or really the great benefit of some of this, is that you can take advantage of featured sales at grocery stores. You double or triple your batches without spending the extra time shopping or cooking. You can prepare for those busy nights when you don't have time to cook. You clean up once, and a lot of times this helps when we're in that rush. We can avoid fast food, and just we know that something is in the freezer and we can pop it in the oven when we get home. Now, one of the things with traditional batch cooking is you do need to be prepared. 1, you have to have a 2-week meal plan, and 2, you need to have the right supplies. So kind of back to if you're making lasagna, for me it's chicken tetrazzini is kind of a favorite, even if it's stir fries. Anything that you can, when you use these type of pans, when you can put it in here, you've got your 4 pans laid out, you cover them with foil, you mark what they are, and they stack up in your freezer nicely. Maybe it's using freezer bags because you might not have as much freezer space. So if you're doing marinades, if you are doing stir fries, anything where you can put it in this and lay it flat in your freezer, and then they stack up. So it saves, again, space, but you still have multiple meals. And I always think about what a great opportunity that if I am suddenly, like if I'm a mom of a teen and I suddenly have all of this house full of teenagers and it's dinner time, if I could pull out my 2 or 3 pans of lasagna versus the 1 I was going to make that night, then I can really then serve them in a way that I hadn't thought possible before. So again, the idea with traditional batch cooking is that once a month you cook, you freeze, recipes, really working off of the plan that you have for those meals, and then you just get to reap the reward and benefits by eating those meals all month long. So now that we might have a sense of what traditional batch cooking might look like, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking, really? Who does this and how does this work? And I am so excited to introduce you to Chris Dalton, who's one of our Momentum moms, and she does traditional batch cooking. And so thank you for coming and sharing your experience. And so tell me, how did you get started? What got you going on this?
Okay, well, this summer we were traveling a lot and I wanted to bring some meals just to help out the host that we were staying with. And my sister-in-law lent me a copy of this book called Once a Month Cooking by Mimi Wilson and Mary Beth Lagerborg. And she said, you might just get some recipe ideas out of here. And so I opened it up, just to have something to do. And I read the story that Mimi Wilson wrote down. She and her husband were missionary doctors, and they had a lot of people in and out of their house because of that. And so Mimi Wilson kind of came up with her own version of batch cooking, and she was able to take care of her family. Her husband worked long hours, and yet she was able to serve those in the community right alongside her husband. And that really kind of inspired me with the heart behind batch cooking. Not only could you serve your family and their needs, but just anybody that God seemed to bring across your path that was maybe in a time of transition or a hectic time in their life, new baby, you could be prepared to just serve them almost on a moment's notice.
Wow.
And so
did it start there? So did you think, okay, I've got the summer, I want to be able to do this. So did you read the book first, and then you thought, I'm going to try it?
Yeah, I read the book first, and she had come up with this plan, kind of built it from the ground up, and she had a whole nice plan put together. Ultimately, she did 30 meals in one day, which I have yet to achieve, but I kind of got my toes wet with the 2-week meal plan.
Okay.
And I don't know if you want to talk about the challenges right now.
Well, tell me, so you did it. So you took one day.
Well, that was the first challenge.
What was your first? Okay.
Yeah, so she was able to get all this done, in one day, and then I wasn't, and I was feeling really defeated, like, oh, I was supposed to get this all done in one day, and I didn't. And I went back through and reread the book, and she said that some moms or some people who do this don't get it done in one day. They'll do all their chicken dishes one day, all their beef dishes one day, all their, vegetarian dishes. And then I was kind of like, oh, I can do that.
So your first time, you didn't get done. What was that first time like? Were you overwhelmed? Was it crazy? Was it fantastic? All those things, probably?
It was just like you would imagine doing anything for the first time. You don't really know what you're doing. You're trying to cook and read a book at the same time. Everything is new. You're not smooth. As you're doing it, you can think of all the ways you could do it better. And about meal number 11, I just hit the wall. And I told my husband, I'm not doing this. Like, this did not work, and I'm never doing this again. And yet you can't quit because you've got a whole refrigerator full of stuff that will just spoil that you just spent money on. So you can't give up. And so my husband was just good about saying, you wanted 14 meals done, and you got 11 done. That's pretty good. Why don't you just do the other ones tomorrow? So my husband was just kind of a good reality check for me. Like, this is your first time. You don't need to nail it this first time.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. So you did it, and then what? You had these meals, you had your 11, and so tell me then what happened for you.
So I think I finished the other ones the next day, and then I went around telling everybody that I talked to that day, I will never, ever, ever, ever do this again. Like, I learned some things, I can see it might work for other people, but it is not for me.
Yeah.
And so then maybe the next day after that, all the meals were made, and my kids came home from school, and I threw a casserole in the oven, and we sat and played a board game until dinner was ready. I thought, well, that was nice. The kids have been at school all day, and now we can kind of reconnect. Okay, that's nice. Today was worth it,
Yeah, worth all the couple days ago. Okay.
And a couple days later, the girls and I were outside, and our neighbor just struck up a conversation with us, and she's a neighbor that has been very good to us, and my girls love her. And we just got in the middle of a conversation, and I knew that I had to get dinner going, but I didn't really want to break off the conversation, so I just said, you know what? Do you want to just come to dinner with our family tonight? We're just having this. It's nothing really fancy, but I'd love to continue talking more. So she said, sure, I'll be over in an hour. She came over. We had a nice dinner with her. So then I was kind of thinking, okay, I get it. Like, I see where this might be a good thing and maybe worth all the work that went into it.
Oh, that's great. So like you said, really kind of connected you personally with the heart behind what the author was talking about. I mean, all of a sudden you had these personal experiences where you thought, wow, okay, this is how it starts to multiply.
Right.
And I know you were telling me too that a friend was having a really stressful week and you were able to just kind of say, hey, can I help? And just like that, it was done, sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, I've been able to help people who have just moved to town, people with new babies, and just a couple friends that I know could just use just a little break out of the kitchen one night because for whatever reason the rest of their week was hectic.
Yeah. So what advice would you give if this is that moment where we've got some moms who, you know, maybe even a single mom who says, gosh, if I can you know, do this, it'll give me more time with my kids. You know, it might be stressful that one day, but it's like you were saying, it continues to kind of, and you've stayed with it, right? Okay. So what advice would you give?
Okay, well, maybe I would take a baby step. Instead of trying to complete a whole month's worth of meals, maybe try the 2-week plan. And instead of, you know, doing 14 meals, do 7, repeat, you know, and repeat them.
Yeah.
Just try that. I would say get a little bit of support. You know, if you've got a friend who's willing to watch your kids, or if your, you know, spouse is on board, or your parents live in town, or your husband's parents live in town, use them to maybe entertain the kids for that day so that you don't feel that you're neglecting your kids to do this. Now when I do all my chopping, I don't stand up anymore and do it. I do all my chopping sitting down, and that's really alleviated a lot of like the physical stress on your body of just standing up all day cooking.
Yeah.
And those are some of the things that I've
Just are learning along
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah.
So what did Zach say about this? This is your husband Zach, who, you know, you kind of talked about, like, it's, I mean, it becomes a family affair.
Right.
And so what have his thoughts been?
But I think the thing that has made the difference, he has said, this has been like a game changer. You know, something you do in your life, and it just changes the way life is for you. You know, like meals are very peaceful. There's no thought that goes into the day other than, you know, taking something out of the freezer and letting it thaw. So.
Oh, that's incredible. Thank you so much. And I think, you know, again, those baby steps is what we're really going to start to talk about next. So one of the other approaches to batch cooking that I came across is called batch preparation. And if batch cooking sounded a little like, I don't know if I can really do that, batch preparation, in fact, one of the titles that I read was it was batch cooking for the rest of us. And so there were kind of 2 approaches to this. One was having an opportunity to really freeze 5 ingredients each week, changing and rotating those items each week. So, for example, you would do, one week you would do hamburger, green peppers, zucchini, chocolate chip cookies, basil butter, just as an option. And you would double all of your servings of those items, put them in your freezer, and then you would change those items the next week. Or you roast a good sized chicken, and you know, you eat that chicken one night and then it's shredded for the, you know, you shred it up and then you also slice it up and you freeze those portions, so then you're making quesadillas or chicken sandwiches with what you have done before. So you're prepping it.
Another thing that I read about it was to batch prep is to cook a double batch each night of your 2-week meal plan or your 1-week meal plan. And so those meals then would be the ones that you would freeze. And then so you'd have 2 weeks stocked up by the time you got to the end of that batch prepping. So instead of sitting down for one day and cooking and cooking and cooking, you would just go ahead and each night double what you did. Make sense? But I think that, Laura, you had a really good approach to batch prepping as we were talking about this topic, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about it. So it's kind of a mix of these two. So tell me what you do.
Yeah, I don't have a great plan. I don't usually think about it too far ahead of time, but I make a meal plan for every week. That is my standard operation. I work on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so those meals I plan that those are quick or that I've prepped them the day before. And so, I mean, little things I'll do is just if I know I'm making tacos on Tuesday and we're having lasagna on Friday, I brown all the meat at once, set it aside, freeze it if I need to, refrigerate it. And, you know, that just makes it easier that next day.
Right.
The other thing I've just really noticed is that almost everything I make, to double it isn't a lot more work. So particularly when meal calendars come up and we're making meals for new moms or other situations, I'll just look at my meal plan and decide, oh, that one's easy, and I'll double that to take to so-and-so.
Well, and I always think too of if we make that main dish, and then does it make it easier then to throw that salad together and put the rolls in because that main dish is already done? Because that's one of the things that kills me is I get into, okay, now I have this, and then I'm like, oh, now I got to make a vegetable, and I got to do this, and so if that one meal doesn't capture all of it, then I find myself like, this 30 minutes for dinner, I'm like, who's doing this? Because, you know, but I think this prepping is what it probably comes down to, is being able to say, if I can prep that main dish, then it's okay that I also am, you know, adding in a vegetable that takes a little bit of preparation.
And I feel like cookbooks lie. Like, all those time estimates, like, I'm like, no, it never. Apparently, I chop really slow.
I was gonna say, if you were trained to chop, 30 minutes done.
I think-
I'm not trained to train. I'm like, okay, in the elbow, like I can't get it going.
I think knife skills. I would take a knife skills class given the right opportunity, because recipes that involve a lot of that, I'm like, yeah, all
That's
the
a lot
more
of work.
reason to double it when I'm doing it so that I don't have to do this 2 days in a row. But I cheat, and I mean, I buy the like steam vegetable, you know, the frozen steamable vegetables. Like, I have those in the freezer all the time, so that depending on what I pull out, you know, I can always toss broccoli and whatever.
Well, and it's probably the trade-offs too with some of this batch prepping. You know, I looked at it as, if I'm going to really put all of my effort into my butternut squash dish, then I'm just going to do tilapia because I can sprinkle it with seasoning and shove it in the oven, sort of thing. And so, be it that I'm doing that beforehand or just making some of those choices, knowing that here's what it's going to take to prep. You brought, this was a couple of cookbooks. I had asked you to bring some things that you had used before, but we were laughing. It's like we have the cookbooks that take up space and look pretty in our kitchens, and the cookbooks we've actually used. So,
well, and I didn't bring in the Mops cookbook, but a lot of the stuff that I make now is from there. I'm making meatball lasagna tonight, doubling it for some meal calendar that just came up in a couple weeks. But this is a book I used in my single days. It was cook once a week, eat well every day. And I used to do this, and when I was single, it was like more like cook once a week, eat well for the month, because I like cut it in half immediately and froze it. But I really liked this book because it was a very like wholesome kind of cooking, you know, more from scratch, lots of vegetables, whole grains, things like that. You know, it helps you think about those things, and it has the checklist, like your shopping list for the week. It's in the book, but you could also download it from the website so that you could use it over and over again.
That'll be on your resource list too.
Yeah,
so.
But it was really good, and I don't know, I just haven't, with the kids being young, I haven't set aside that, like, it took me all day.
Well, and I know that they talk about too.
But I see the value, at least in some of it, even trying again to do
Right.
to do parts of it.
Because even as my kids get older, and I think for our moms of teens or even our single moms, where you really have to start to, you work as a team more, knowing that they can handle the knife, maybe, and some of those sort of opportunities come up. Is that maybe it's really making it part of what you do as a family, of just sitting down and saying, okay, let's pick a few things. And like we talked about, these cookbooks are great, but you also can just really kind of look at what is my family like, and
The usual recipe.
yeah, here's our usual kind of stuff, and maybe I sprinkle it in with a few new things, knowing that we all like stuff with ground beef or whatever it is. But we don't want to overthink it, and there are resources out there, but it might just be that we just need to just take 5 minutes and say, what are we having this week, and can we double it?
Yeah.
So
And I wish back when I did this, I can remember like wishing that I had somebody else to do it with.
yes,
Like I've never had that friend that whatever, it just worked out or it meshed. But I mean, it would have been a heck of a lot easier if you're gonna do the big cooking, like spend a day doing a lot, to have two people doing it
Yeah.
and sharing it.
I think so too, and that really does lead to our next option. Our third option for batch cooking is by far my favorite, and so this is called the Girls' Night In, or a casserole swap. And the idea is that you get a group of friends together and you choose recipes, and then you get to swap them. So you go home, you don't cook them together, you go home, you cook your option, you double it, and you bring it back, and then you swap it with your friends. Okay, so if anybody does this, will you invite me? Because I've always wanted to do this, and I know that as I was talking with people about this option, all of us were like, oh, we'd really like to do this. So I'm hoping that some group out there and some table out there will be inspired and will start this, and that you'll invite me. And we have an example to show you of how this can really work.
I spent 2 days with Darcy Putnam and her family. She is a full-time mom with a full-time job. She has 3 boys, a baby on the way, and not much free time. That's where her freezer and friends come in.
But nice and slowly.
Lemon chicken tortellini's on the menu tonight, and Darcy Putnam is cooking for 6. That's 6 families. With a little help around the kitchen, Darcy spends about 6 hours cooking. But she says it saves her time all month long.
If you think about a mom who works full-time, she is going to be able to walk into her freezer, grab an 8x8 casserole dish out and go, oh, we're having chicken penne pasta for dinner. Done.
Off the stove and into the freezer, the meals are ready for tomorrow's Freezer Club. But for Darcy, it's not just about saving time and money.
We're very careful about how many red meat dishes, how many seafood dishes we do each month. So we just are trying to really be well-rounded with what our kids and our families are eating.
I could prefer that, like mahi-mahi and salmon and shrimp a lot.
And in case you're wondering, the husbands like the food too.
Sex is pretty good, but Freezer Club's not quite there, but it's pretty good.
So here's how the club works. There are 7 members: Darcy, Kelly, Shelley, Amy, Rachel, Carla, and Jen. Each member brings 6 servings of 2 all-natural local meals, except 2 ladies who split meals into what they call halvesies. So each mom goes home with 12 different meals, usually saving around $200 a month. For dessert, the ladies meet up for coffee and talk about kids.
Oh, it is! He rubs her earlobe too or something.
Food.
You can use whatever the bun of your choice.
I'll forward you the recipe right now.
It's kind of a different chili or a beef and cheddar potato pie.
And they don't hold back on dishing out their opinion on everything from turkey meatloaf burgers.
I know, it needs a better name. Rachel, it's right Rachel Ray, and be like, Rachel Ray, you need a better name.
To a culinary classic.
I haven't met a pork tenderloin I didn't like.
So what keeps the moms meeting every month?
The best part is just getting together with my girlfriends, brainstorming new recipe ideas. All of us kind of have a little bit of a hobby where we're looking at new recipes, new seasonal foods.
By the end of the night, the chefs know what's a hit from last month and what's on the menu for next time.
Sometimes it's just a matter of, yeah, I'd have it again. Not sure if it's on the home run list. But then there's some that you're for sure like, that was awesome. We need to have it again. You know, sometimes there's meals where we're like, we'll have that every month because it was great.
And just before heading home, the ladies swap goodbyes and 12 easy, hassle-free meals.
So we've talked about a lot of options with batch cooking, and you can see there's a tremendous amount of flexibility here. So there's no one right way. Whatever works for your family, or just start. If it's just batch prepping a little bit, maybe that is just kind of that extra boost where you kind of get a chance to take care of yourself a little bit. You know, we're so busy taking care of all the rest of the people in our lives that sometimes I think, gosh, if I had just taken a few minutes to brown that ground beef, I know it sounds crazy, but it might have been a way to just kind of take care of myself in just those 5 minutes. And so I hope that I've really, or that we have really inspired you to get thinking about your meals in a new way. Our verse for today's meeting comes from John 6:11, and it reads, "Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish." So let's take batch cooking a step further. Maybe your doubling or prepping will be in a different area. God is the great multiplier. It's one of his character traits. It's who he is. So when we turn it over to him, whatever and all of that we have, it begins to double and multiply beyond anything we can do on our own. This multiplication for me is, I have to be honest, is one of my favorite character traits of the Lord. And he shows up in these amazing ways. You know, maybe it is your cooking. Maybe when you double that meal, you're able to serve someone else and give it to them. And that's how it multiplies. Maybe it's your time. Maybe your prayer becomes, you know, Lord, multiply my time, especially in those moments when we feel like we don't have enough and we can't get it all done. Those are sometimes when he just shows up in amazing ways for me. Maybe it's your resources. Maybe it's your efforts that you want him to multiply. To be honest, maybe it's just your heart. You know, for me, letting the Lord into my heart was the greatest multiplier of all. And he does it in ways, again, that just awe and inspire and humble me daily. So I pray that God will multiply you in the way that you pray for. Again, time, resources, cooking, efforts, and most of all, your heart. I'm so confident that he's going to fulfill that and show you his multiplication table just like he did for me. And so to him, all the praise and glory. Thanks.